Hello guys, this is James again, and I'm here to report to you guys for my Macau trip. I went to Macau from January the 5th to January 8th. I've also visited Hong Kong, but I spent like 4 days in Macau, and I want to report you back on what games I played, and some interesting hands, and like the dynamic of like Macau poker rooms. So I played 5100 in Wayne, Macau, as you can see here. I played 4 days, one session for per day, and 5100 Hong Kong dollars. It's almost like $6, $13 in USD, right? So it's pretty big, and that's the smallest game which is running in Wayne, Macau. I know like Venetian might be running some smaller games like 2550, um, but like it's pretty rare, and I heard like the table is not running that often. The games definitely plays bigger in Macau. And also like another factor I don't want to play in Venetian is that like the rate is even higher. So in Wayne, I think the rate is 5% and capped at 200, right? So no matter the stake. And in Venetian, it's like the cap was dependent on the stake. I think for 2550 is like a 200 Hong Kong dollars cap, and for 5100 it's like 500. So I'm not even sure if with that high of a rake the game is beatable. Maybe it's beatable, but like it's not profitable enough. Like I want to spend that many hours playing there. So I spent all 4 days in Wayne, Macau. And I think they definitely have a very different dynamic. Um, as you can see, like I think I was running somewhat hot, and especially in the first 3 days. And the last day I wasn't, running good. I have like multiple big pots like running into some premium hands. But we're gonna talk about them later. But in general, like the dynamic, the whole atmosphere in Macau is very different from like you can see in poker rooms in the United States. Like especially things like I play in San Francisco Bay Area, right, where people give tons of actions in like 2-5 or 5-10 tables where people can open early position with 4-6 off and like call large 3 bet. It's simply not it's never gonna be the case in Macau. So I think in Macau, like a lot of regulars are very conservative. Like they are in general like play a tight passive style. It's not like I'm not saying like they play too few hands pre-flop, but like it's more of like their um their post-flop approach are definitely severely like under bluffing. Even compared to the majority of live players who are already under bluffing. So they are really conservative, and also like I see people make crazy folds, like they don't want to stack off like as nearly as they should. And I can also see like they don't want to sink value bet. Like I see like aces like check down to the river, like and make a small bet like on a non-scary board. So I even see like people like tanking in a spot which should be a snap call, like a lady tank 5 minutes, like with her aces on 5, 7, 8, ace queen with top set, and like it's a rainbow board. So just worrying about the 6-9 there, facing a river shove of like 100 bigs. Um, so I definitely feel like we have a very big skill edge there, but it's not like the game is so good like you're gonna make tons of money, right? Because like people are very tight passive. Um, but in general, like it's still profitable. And we are making. I think we made like around like 7,400 on the trip, and I played like 34 hours in total, and I definitely feel like I'm playing my A or A minus game, and trying our best to adjust to the game, just because like the game is so different from like what I used to play. Um, and we are winning like around 17 bigs, a little short of 17 bigs per hour, so that's pretty good. Um, we are definitely running hard in like first 3 days, but like I feel like even in general, like the game is beatable at like 7 to 8. Like let's say like your goal is like 7 to 8 bigs per hour. I think that's achievable. As long as you play like some like loose aggressive style, I definitely like lose a bit pre-flop because like people not three betting you as as nearly as enough, right? So I see people flying queens on the button versus like mid position open. Like people are very conservative, even though like a lot of people buying deep. The maximum buying for 50 to 100 is 25,000 Hong Kong dollars. We usually buying for like 20,000, and like especially in the first 3 days, like we quickly double up or something, and then like at least we up some money, so like we usually cover the whole table, right? So except for the last day, I wasn't running good. So yeah, let's talk through some hands, and we're probably gonna make two videos, and there's gonna be part one, which I'm gonna go through probably three hands where like they are all big parts, like three bet or four bet parts. Like I play in this trip on this trip. Okay, so our first hand, let's go from the beginning. I think it's mid position. I believe he's a wreck because like a lot of people recognize them. I think Macau, I believe like it's just because of the stake, so that like a lot of people playing there are just rags, especially during weekdays. Uh, when I was at the table, people usually don't perceive me as a strong player just because like I'm sort of new to them. So we three bets like we haven't three bet a lot in that session, and we have a3 suited. I think the um against like type passive player, we're not worrying about like ever worrying about them like four betting bluff that often, right? So like with this kind of hands, like we are very happy to take the initiative, like and three bet the mid position opener, and especially we are playing somewhat deep, like we are 150 big blinds deep, and also like deny some equity from the big blind. So we three bets somewhat standard size, a little bit on the bigger side in position, but like live I tend to be bigger because like they're gonna call with the same range anyway, right? So the mid position, the reg, I don't think he's like a bad player, but definitely like on the passive side. So he called, and the flop was pretty good for our hand. So we're looking at 5 6 two spades and deuce of diamond. I think it's a clear bet. Like it's like one of the best bluffs we can have. Like we have a flush draw and a gut shot to the nuts, uh, and also like on this board, like it should favor our range because we still have all the over pairs, and we still have like a clear range advantage. It's not like they're gonna have two pairs that often. Like they might have fives and sixes, but like probably not deuces. I don't think they call deuces against three bet pre-flop out of position. Um, we end up betting like 800. We're gonna talk about this further after going through this hand, but here like I tend to bet like a small size where it puts because our opponent's range is like a lot of ace highs and a lot of overcards, so that we want to put them in a tough spot where they sort of don't know what to do with those like overcards, right? We're not folding like tens. To be fair, we're not folding like all the overpair. We're not folding like sevens through maybe tens or jacks. We're not folding those. So they called, and turn was a somewhat break, right? So They can have some 5-6. They can even have like ace-5 suited if they decide to call preflop, but like it's not that likely they're gonna have many of those, right? So especially like the 5 actually reduces the combo of 5-6 suited. So we are still ahead of that range, and our range is still ahead of the range. We still have like all the good overpairs. I think this is a spot where um, I'm a little unsure about the sizing. So I think in on this board, like we can use a bigger sizing, or we can use like a smaller. It's kind of a, yeah. It's I know it's like confusing, but the reason for using a big size is that like the range should be capped at one pair. One small like a middle pair type of hands like most of the time, right? Um, so the range is capped, and this should be a spot where we are incentivized to bet big or even overbet, given our range advantage, especially when the SPI not that big. When we are playing like super deep, then we need to worry about like our netted disadvantage here, where they can have a lot of full houses where we cannot, right? Like so. We're not gonna have many 5-6s, and we're never gonna have sixes, and we never gonna have deuces, right? So but I don't think we are deep enough to consider that. So like range advantage still plays a big part. Like we had aces, kings, queens, and they shouldn't have those. So I think it's a great spot to bet big. But there is also a case where can be justified for betting smaller size, where on this board like it favors our range, so that like they have a lot of ace highs, and uh they have a lot of ace highs, and like or even like some king highs where they're gonna fold to one bet anyway. For example, like they have like ace jack of diamonds here. They just gonna fold it most of the time, right? So it's like from that perspective, it seems like making more sense to bet a smaller size. Um, we can discuss later, but obviously, like when we are looking at Poker Snowy, um, it seems like it advocates like um interesting a check here some of the time. Not some of the time, but like most of the time. But the EV difference like of betting small and like um checking seems to be really close. If we actually choose to overbet, you can see like the EV difference is like there's no EV difference, right? It's like I think it seems like overbetting is also a valid strategy. So it seems like personally advocates for like overbetting or check here, while our bet like it's not that bad. Like it sacrificed a little EV, but like not that much. So they caught. And the river, we decide to give up. Like it's a pretty standard spot to give up here, right? Because first, like, a double pair board, so it's less likely that we're gonna sing value bet our hands here. Like we're still gonna bet our aces, kings, queens, probably, but uh, on the other hand, like it's not like any of our bluffs gets there, right? Like, and it might be like 6-7, maybe 6-7 suited, but on the other hand, like we have ace high here on a double pair board. We still have some showdown value against like the range of like for example like ace queen or ace jack or something, right? And then or even ace king if they decide to play that play it as a flat pre-flop. On the other hand, we should be more incentivized to use uh, a3 of clubs, a3 of diamonds, and a3 of hearts as a bluff here, because with a3 of spades, we actually block the hands where we want them to check call, and check fold. For example, they have ace queen of spades, ace jack of spades, any not flush draw where they check call the flop, check call the turn, and fold to a river bet. Like we block their folding range, right? So it's a bad hand to bluff here. And we still have a lot of hands that we can bluff here. Like for example, like let's say we have 7-8 suited. Then I think we have 8 high on the river. It's a clear bet, right? Like so, and we still have like all the over pairs, and like we have all the, um, even like some full houses, like so we can comfortably bet here. So that's like the hand itself, and we end up like running through the solver here. Let me actually pull out here. So um, this is like the range we gave our opponent. Some were like on the loose side. Some hands we give them like 50%. They're gonna call like ace five suited 50% of time, and some hands like they're gonna call like almost like 100% time. Like fights through jacks, I'm pretty sure they're gonna call like almost like 100% time. Um, and our range are like more like this, right? So against the like mid position, some hands are like we are three betting. This is like definitely on the loose side, but we tend to three bet more often because like people are not four betting enough, as we discussed before. So and on this board, as you can see, like we're on the position checks, and when we look at our hand, a3 of spades. So solver actually advocates betting half pot or like uh, two-third pot like most of the time. So I think we definitely like so that's a kind of a lesson learned. Like even on low boards, like where they're gonna have a lot of ace highs and overcuts. Like we can uh, you know we should like use slightly bigger size, if especially when we have a lot of equity on this board, right? Like as you can say, like if you have a3 of clubs, like you are betting small some percentage time, but not a3 of spades. It's still like you still have more EV by betting bigger because like you have more equity, right? Like so, that's like a lesson to be learned. And so we end up like, let's say for example, like we bet like half pot, right? And they called, and we said the turn was a five club. So they're gonna check again, and we can so for example, like if we have a3 of spade, and here it actually advocates for always betting pot with our hand, because as we discussed before, like on this board, five of club is pretty much a brick, and we still have a massive range advantage, like over a small SPR. So it seems like here, and like it advocates of like betting big with a lot of our hands. For example, like all the almost like um interesting. Like it doesn't. It's checking some 7-8, but like that's a different story. Like that we can kind of go through later. Um, I don't know what's going on here, but it seems like a3 of spade is always a pot size bet, along with all of our value bets, right? Aces, kings, queens, and jacks. And some 6-7 suited, depending on how line we go. But like it seems like a small bet is rarely the case on this trend. Uh, and on the short, I say, and the river is 6 of heart, right? So let's say they called. Okay, let's go in here. Okay, here. So river they checks, and it seems like here, yeah. If you look at A3, it seems like it align with our analysis. We are checking like a3 of spades almost like 100% time, but we are betting a3 of hearts and a3 of diamonds. I really don't know how big of a difference like of a3 of clubs versus like a3 of diamonds. Maybe like a3 of diamonds of block their backdoor flush draw, etc. But like I'm not sure how much it matters in real life, but I think a3 of spade is a clear check here. So for all the reasons we discussed. But like if you look at like 7-8, it doesn't have any showdown value, so like it's for sure a pot size bet on the river, given we have 8 high, and we still have a lot of hands that we can bet. Like we still have like aces through jacks that we can value bet, and like we have for sure like 6-7 suited, right? Two combos of 6-7 suited, and sometimes like some 6-8 suited. I gave like 50% of them. So they showed up with jacks, so I don't think we're ever gonna fold out that hand, but but the result doesn't matter that much, right? So what I'm trying to analyze here is what hands we should bet and what hands we should choose to bluff, and not like, oh, we have a combo draw here, we always gonna put on the gas and like never stop, and like it's not the case. It also depends on the wrong out, right? And also like depends on whether we have better bluffs there, or like whether we have that we have values that is like we sort of have like values that which are convincing there, right? Like for example, like on this wrong out, we're not gonna have that many values, right? Like for example, like for let's say the river is a spade, then we can have a lot of values there so that we can work in more bluffs. But like on this river, it's kind of tough run out for us. So like we need to give up some of our bluffs, because like we're not gonna have too much value there. Our values are mainly over pairs and a little bit of like full houses, but not that much. The second hand is also interesting. So it's also a 3-bet pot, so like rather big. And so we opened on the gun like 8-10 of clubs, which is pretty standard. Low jack called, button called. Small blind. I think it's somewhat good player, especially I somewhat like from the sizing we can see like he's somewhat okay. He should be somewhat okay, right? So he 3-bets like to 1800, so that's like pretty standard size squeeze, and we end up calling here. As you can see, like I think, like after this, and like I was talking through, I having this discussion with other upswing members, and like a lot of people think that folding seems to be the best option pre-flop, especially like against such a large size squeeze. Or full betting, right? Full betting sometimes could be an option if we think that they are squeezing too much, but like calling seems to be a little too loose, especially like we are only playing like 150 big blinds deep, and we are dominated by a lot of hands that they choose to squeeze, right? So for example, like ace queen, ace king. And proportionally is usually very tight here. As I said, like ace queen suited is not good enough to call, which I kind of doubt it in my poker. I think ace queen suited is definitely a call, but ace 10 suited might be a little too weak. But anyway, like if you look at the EV, it's not too bad, but like just kind of keeping that in mind. Racing sometimes could be good. So low jack called and button called, which is kind of interesting. So and villain actually bets like 2400 into 5800, right? So less than half pot, but we don't have a very good pair here. We don't even have the backdoor flush draw. But interestingly, at that moment, I kind of pick up the tell where the button is about to fold. He's like holding his cards, and like it seems like for sure he's folding. When I was still thinking about it. If it's not that tell, I think it's a step fold from me without the backdoor flush draw. But like with that tell, I think we can comfortably say like we're gonna play in position with a like low SPR with a middle pair. which is somewhat good. And like in the bet size is not too big anyway. So we end up calling. So I still like this decision actually. So so on the turn like the spade came, right? So like if they bet again, like we are definitely folding. So but it went check check. We still have some showdown value. On the river they bet like 2500. It's it's a little weird because like what hands he gonna bet here with such a small sizing, right? Like I think it's gonna be queens, kings, maybe some aces. Um especially like aces without a spade or uh or like actually like aces with a spade where they choose not to bet the 10. Um so it's kind of interesting here where I don't think people are bluffing enough in this spot, especially with such a small sizing, right? So it's like almost never a bluff. But it's somewhat like a single value bet, like with like their aces and kings about like um. So here, like when I was thinking about this spot at that moment, first like I think it's a spot where we can overbluff, especially against like tight passive players who don't want to stack off. And like we kind of know where their hand is, right? Like we kind of know they sort of have like a weak one pair hand. Um, and at the same time, like when we are looking at this board, I suddenly realize like out of all the hands we can call flop on the flop, we're gonna have some king queen, we're gonna have some spades, right? So we're gonna have like um, we're gonna have like some maybe some 8 9 there, but somewhat unlikely because like we probably gonna fold that pre-flop. It's like kind of too weak to call a 6x 3 bet. So we're gonna have like some like we're gonna have some like a jack tens there maybe. We're gonna have some like sets there. We're gonna have jacks tens. Um, so I think we are definitely shoving all the sets on the river, and we are shoving all the straights and flushes. We're not gonna have too many like flushes and straights because like we're gonna bet most of them on the turn, but we're still gonna have some like slow play ones, right? And with king queen suited, we're not gonna have king queen offsuit, but with king queen suited, we should be checking a ton on the turn, I believe. I don't think we plan to call the flop to kind of bluff a spade turn. Uh, I think it's much better to bluff the river, um, especially we're not gonna have a spade when because like we're always gonna have king queen suited, not king queen offsuit. Um, so as player, I feel like ace 10 suited might be the worst hands that we can have on the river. Although like when we are shoving here, like we are giving them like an insanely good price, right, for them to call because like they are calling like 7,500 into like I don't know like 20,000 pot. So like they only need like 25% of chance like to win this hand. Like the pot is crazy, but like I also feel like um especially the Rex there, like they're gonna identify this spot like they are almost never good, and like most people are severely under bluffing on this river. So that like and like I can have so many good hands there, so like they probably gonna fold their overpair. Um, so we end up shoving like $10,000. Sorry, that's 10,000 Hong Kong dollars, and then they tanked them for like 4 minutes and they folded. So like somewhat good news for us because that's like almost like the only big pot I won on the last day. We're not gonna run this through the solver because like um, this hand is a little weird. Maybe if you are interested, you can run through the solvers, but like probably like a solver gonna tell you a very different thing because like I don't think the early position like three better can ever have a small bet out of position on the river that often. I think it's like pretty rare case like that it's probably like the solver wouldn't provide too much help. So the last hand I want to talk about is a four bet pot. So like, uh, technically speaking, it's not like too interesting because like our hand, it's very narrow range, like under the gun plus two versus like under the gun opener, and but like but I think it's but like this those spots like these spots are like um are also like pretty much headaches for a lot of live players in and they are so big that like we simply cannot ignore those spots, right? So I think I also want to talk about this hand as well, and also want to hear from you guys like what you would do in such tough spots. So underground player, I think he's like a Japanese rag in somewhat solid. It should be it should be like more of like more aggressive like than most people on the table, but like probably not as aggressive as Hero. Um, so he opened like so I don't think it like it's anywhere near a maniac something to be fair. So he raises like under the gun 300, and we have pocket kings. And we are playing like 200 big blinds deep. So we under the gun plus two. Um, of course, like we are three betting, right? It's like against like very good players in like relatively a tight table, you can make a case for flatting, but like I tend to three betting. We still have a lot of value to be had, and we are so ahead of the range, and also like we don't need to worry too much about like protecting our flatting range, etc., etc. Unless low stakes like cash game table, right? So then folded to him, and he's four bets to 3,500. So that the alarm definitely goes off, right? So I think early position against early position, I don't think he's gonna mess around that much. Like our range, like my range should look very strong, and his range should be pretty strong as well. So uh, some people like would just like five bet and getting there. And I think if we are playing like 100 big steep, like I'm happy to just getting pre, um, so we can realize all our equity. But like 200 bigs, I tend not to have a five bet range, like but rather have like more hands in my hand, more hands in my range, so that like we can um, play more profitable post flop. Like we can still have aces and like we can stack off them like that often. And like I don't think like at this stake like people are full betting bluff, especially early position against early position that often. Like I don't think they ever gonna show up with like an ace five suited there. Maybe some of the time, but like still like pretty rare. Especially when I don't think we have too creative an image. Um, so the flop came Queen of Diamonds, Three of Heart, Six of Spade. Pretty dry board, but like I don't really like it because like if they have queens now they beat us, right? So they bet like 4,000, so around like two-thirds of pot. And I think we have a clear call here. We have kings, we have overpair. We're still ahead of the all of their bluffs, right? So we caught. We still can have queens here. We still have aces here. We still have some ace king. We're gonna for sure almost fold all our ace kings. Maybe some ace king with backdoor flush draw, but like that's really ambitious considering like the SPR is pretty low right now. And but we're gonna call our kings and queens and aces. I don't think we need to raise our queens in such a dry board, and we are in position anyway, and like you know, and money gonna get in like on the turn anyway, right? So and on the turn they shoved, so they shoved like 12,000. They have us covered, so it's like still two-thirds of the pot. So at this point, like we definitely have a very tough decision. I think I made a mistake here. It's I do have King of Spade, So one good thing about our hand is that we don't have king of hearts, so we don't block their flush draws. For example, like ace of heart, king of heart, right? But that mattered that much because like that's just one hand. And on the other hand, like if they have aces and queens, like we have very little to none equity in this pot, and despite like we having overpair here, like folding king seems to be crazy, but like if you look at our range, like king seems to be one of the worst hands we can have after calling the flop, right? As I said, like we're not gonna have ace king here. Maybe we have ace king of hearts and ace king of diamonds and ace king of spades, but that's just three combos. And like even those, like we're gonna fold maybe half of them on the flop, and then we're not gonna have and we're gonna have still have our aces because we're not gonna have a 5-bet range preflop. So we're gonna have our queens, we're gonna have our aces, we're gonna have our kings, and it seems the king is actually bottom of our range. So I think here, like against a live player, I lean towards folding, and we did end up folding. I don't know what he has, but I think like most of the time, people are not crazy enough to like bluff that often. Like some people would say, oh, he can have like all ace king here, like all they say like he has ace queen here, right? He can have he's just crazy and he has ace queen here, um, and we are making a big mistake, but like um, but you don't have to think that way, right? Because uh, they can even have kings here and like chop with us, but that's just one combo. But what I'm saying here is that like, yeah, we're gonna make a bad fold when we have kings, but we're gonna stack them off when we have queens and aces, right? Um, so that's like like because we never gonna know how they play and how they play the range and like how they're gonna play post flop, especially in these spots where range should be pretty narrow, right? You're never gonna know. Maybe they triple barrel their ace king like 100% of the time. Maybe like they double barrel like their ace king like 0% of the time. Maybe like they don't even full bet their ace king, right? Like so, and then you always feel like they can have ace king there, so like you're always gonna call all your over pairs. Like you're always gonna call your ace queen kings and aces, right? So like you are making those assumptions like which could cost you money, right? Because you are making assumption like they're gonna you know you're gonna double barrel like all of their hands, or like you are making assumption where they're not ever gonna have ace king here. I don't want to make those kind of assumptions. So like making those assumptions, especially in those kind of big pots, is very dangerous. So I lean towards like playing purely GTO here and look at our range, like try not to be exploitable, and we always gonna make money in the long run, right? So I actually put into uh, GTO plus the solver, um, and see what it tells us, like, and it's kind of interesting that when we put the range as some ace queen suited, 30% of ace queen suited, 30% of queens, I don't think people full betting that often, but like let's consider like the worst scenario, right? And like they have 50% of ace king and they have ace king off and ace king suited, and like they have aces kings, and our range still gonna have all the aces, all the kings, all the queens, right? And we're gonna have ace queen suited. Some of the time we're gonna have like ace queen off, ace king off 30% of the time. We're folding those ace king suited, we definitely call pre-flop. So like when you are looking at those two ranges, like it's not like they're gonna have a range advantage there, right? So like that's like so that also like is super weird, so that like the solver actually advocates like checking as a pre-flop aggressor like 100% of the time, because the range are so narrow, right? Like we even have a range advantage on this board because we're gonna have more queens. So anyway, let's say like they bet, right? So and we called. So like and you if you look at the spot here on the flop, it turns out that I forgot to tell you guys what does Poker Snowy thinks, right? So Poker Snowy If we go back to the decision here, it's calling like it's calling. The focus noise is calling, but that the EV difference is really really small. So like it's very close. If you think like your opponent is under bluffing, which like almost all the like players are, like then we should be folding here. But anyway, look at like what the solver says. Like the solver is making a query fold. Um, Actually, like it's folding like kings like 50% of the time, like almost randomly. Doesn't matter what the suit is. Maybe some suits is a little better and some suits are a little worse. I don't think that matters that much. And then when we called, it's for hot and it decided to fold almost 80% of our kings if we end up being there. Like for sure we're gonna call queens. We even fold some of our aces. So like in a lot of those spots like where range is pretty narrow and like we should like think more thorough those spots instead of just looking at, oh, we have an overpair, like if they have it, they have it, like right, like so we should be looking at our range and how that interacts with this board and like what hands we are folding and what hands we are calling, right? So like it's actually simpler than most of the small pots where your range is super wide and sort of it's very hard to calculate like an MDF, right? So and it doesn't matter that much like how they play their hand because like um we're playing like regardless of like how they play, right? So like um in most of the spots like single race spots, like it's you have some sort of idea of like how people usually play, like they have sets or like they always gonna race with sets or two pairs and like they're always gonna bet with the top pairs, etc, etc. But like in this kind of spots, it's like very tricky because like you never gonna know how they're gonna play the range and like they could be like betting all their hands like thinking they have a range of advantage while they haven't, and you're not gonna lose that much by folding kings here because like as we said, like, we still gonna have aces and queens, we're gonna stack them you know and when they think we are weak, right? So that's the three hands we played on the trip, and we're probably gonna do another video, and but like we're not gonna go through solvers like for each hand, but like this time like we want to try to get into details of all those hands because I think they are interesting hands, and it sort of like represents like how people usually play in that kind of a different like poker scene. And I heard like higher stakes like 100 200 a bit like a bit of more actions like people are bluffing more. I think that would be more interesting game. But I think overall, like in people in Macau, they are here to gamble. They are here to like win money from each other. I don't think it's as entertained as like most of the casinos I've run into in the United States. I actually happen to run into like Alex Terrari, and we even had a few discussions. We shoot a video or something, and I think he's like playing Macau and like coaching some people, and also like playing high stakes probably. Um, so that's like hopefully that's very kind of useful information for you guys if you are interested in playing Macau and also like learning some uh, live poker cash game strategy. Yeah, that will be it. Thank you guys.